How are you?
I'm good. How are you? Y'all set?
Good, yeah.
Cool. Y'all level. Right on. All right. Awesome. Thank you for taking the time to be on my podcast. I really appreciate it.
Of course, yeah, my pleasure.
Uh,
Thanks for
yeah.
inviting me.
Is there anything you want to promote before we get started or plug?
Nothing in particular, I don't think. Just the our sibling band Actors is going on tour in Europe, coming
Oh,
up at the end of January and
it's
February. So
opening for the Damned.
we're just doing a one
Wow.
one show with them in Vancouver.
Ooh, that's got to be awesome.
Yeah, that's gonna be super cool.
Congratulations on that one. That was
Thank you.
fantastic.
Yeah,
Um,
really excited.
yeah, that's great. Tell me about your latest album, Ultraviolet. Tell me about the
Sure.
making of it and just give me all the
All the
details about it. Yeah. I want to hear all
sounds
of it.
good. Well, it took a couple years for us to complete the record. Jason and I had started working on a few songs together, and some of those songs ended up on the Reckless EP.
Mhm.
And yeah, we just because we have the two bands kind of in tandem, Actors and Leathers,
Yeah.
we were just slowly writing songs together for the Leathers material. So, and of course, we did a ton of touring, and there was a pandemic in there, and
Yeah.
all sorts of stuff was happening. So it took a little longer than we anticipated to get the record out and on vinyl finally, but yeah, we're happy to have all the tunes together. And despite there being some amount of time between the songs, like I feel like the record is quite cohesive, like in terms of the sound and the quality of the songs and things like that. So yeah, we're pretty proud of it. We're happy that it's finally out in the world.
How do you like being on Artifact Records? Have they treated you pretty well then?
Oh yeah, yeah. They've been great. They're just really flexible and allowing like the artist to, express themselves in the best way that they see fit. They're like, they help us with all the kind of nuts and bolts of releasing a record, but creatively they just let us do what we like to do. And yeah, they're
Awesome.
super super cool with everything.
How do you separate Actors and Leathers from sound and writing and all that?
Yeah, I think like Leathers is definitely has like a dreamier, like more like yeah, more dreamlike, more feminine aesthetic, I think, than Actors is like a little bit more dystopian uh, and that kind
That's
of
a great
vibe.
way of describing that. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. That's-
So yeah, I feel like Leathers is kind of more in that dreamier kind of fantasy world aesthetic, whereas Actors has like that kind of more like a bit of a darker worldview.
Did that kind of come naturally, or is that something that you kind of had planned ahead of, or was it just like, oh, I want to do this style of music, and so I just put it in this project kind of thing?
I think it just kind of came naturally. I mean, like Jason writes the lyrics for Actors, so that's definitely more of like his aesthetic, and it has maybe, although there is like a feminine aspect and like kind of like a dark romantic
Of course, yeah.
aspect to the Actors song. Like it definitely comes from a more like masculine voice. So I think, and having me as the lyricist for Leathers, like there's just kind of different viewpoints that men and women have and different aesthetics that they're drawn to more. So it's probably like just, lyrics are written by two different people. So they're kind of having that like different topics and different stylistic feel.
Course. Growing up in Vancouver, were you always interested in arts, like when you're going through schooling? And I know you did graphic arts and stuff like that. Was that
Yeah.
something that you were naturally drawn to? And did you kind of start young and then kind of move into something like that?
Yeah, like the high school that I went to, we actually had a darkroom photography program, which was unusual for the time. Like, a lot of kids were like taught how to use a camera in like art in their art classes and things like that. But we actually had a dark room where we could like process and
Awesome.
print our own film and that kind of stuff. So that was like pretty formative for me. Like I really got into the whole darkroom process and like just the whole alchemy of like going into like this dark red room
Yeah.
and like
Yeah. I know, I get it. I totally get it.
and making like images, like it has this like the whole chemistry, and like there's definitely something like magical about like seeing an image kind of appear out of nothing on a piece of paper or on it's pretty cool. So I was definitely like fascinated by that. And I started to like, some of my friends were in bands in high school, so I started to like photograph them. We had like a community center near the high school that would put on like all ages shows and stuff like that,
Cool, yeah.
kind of mostly like metal and punk stuff for the most part. But yeah, I was like photographing bands in that way, and that led into me doing an internship at a local newspaper here called the Georgia Straight, and for shooting for CBC Radio 3, which is like our version of like
BBC.
KEX,
Yeah.
kind
Yep.
of
Mhm.
style stuff. So they would do like in studio sessions, and I would photograph bands and things like that. So that was kind of my like, initially my interest in music was more like on the artistic side because that's just sort of where I came from. But I'd always like played guitar and been interested in writing songs, but that didn't really come until later when I met Jason, and he had said like, you have a nice singing voice. Like, why aren't you in a band? What's going
Right.
on?
Right.
So yeah, it was his like his push and like confidence in me to be a singer that like definitely took that to the next step. But then beyond photography, like after that initial exploration and like working in photography, I got more involved in graphic design. I worked at a graphic design studio in Vancouver for a long time doing like branding for restaurants and kind of more kind of corporate jobs and stuff like
Or,
that.
yeah.
But all that kind of, like learning those skills and those tools definitely like was a transferable skill into doing my own graphics and my own photography and all that kind of stuff in the music projects. So
Yeah.
yeah, and then after design, Actors was touring a whole bunch, so it was like becoming difficult for me to carry on a full-time like day job.
Right.
So a friend of mine who I'd known through design and who I'd always drawn with and stuff like that, my friend Chris taught me to tattoo, and
Ooh.
so then I've also been tattooing for the last 5 years as well.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
awesome. Oh, that's
That's the
fantastic.
short, the
Short,
short,
short version of
the
that, yeah.
short long of it, but yeah.
What music were you like listening to growing up? And I mean, Vancouver, shoot, man, that's there's a lot. Most people like to focus on what bands are like in America, but I've always kind of been drawn to bands that are also in Canada.
For
And
sure.
were you influenced by, like Skinny Puppy or any of the other bands that were out there? And did that kind of go, okay, I kind of want to go into doing music and doing that part?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like I loved Skinny Puppy. Like my friends and I were definitely fascinated by them, and like the videos were kind of mysterious and dark, and they were like exploring like heavy themes about like vivisection and like all this kind
Oh
of
yeah, yeah,
stuff.
exactly.
So it was kind of like it was really interesting and like horrific, but like, you can't look away. And when I finally saw them, I didn't get to see them live until like the early 2000s when they did that first comeback tour. But yeah, when I finally saw them live, I was just like also fascinated by their theatrical presence
Yeah.
live. So yeah, definitely a huge Skinny Puppy fan. I remember when I was in high school, we have a music store here called Tom Lee, and I was up in like the keyboard department just kind of messing around, and I saw Kevin Key up there. I was like 14 or 15 years old, and I was like, that's him. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, it's him. And I was like kind of messing around a keyboard, and he was like looking at me. I was like, oh my God. I was like
Oh, I would have been a nervous wreck. I would have been
little
a nervous wreck.
starstruck, like
Great.
teen Shannon,
Yep.
having a Skinny Puppy moment at the local music store.
No, I
But
get it. That's great. There was
yeah.
one dude I talked with. He worked out in I'm trying to think. I think it was out in Dallas, and he worked where they would kind of fix and repair analog synthesizers.
Oh,
And he
cool.
was telling me when Skinny Puppy was on tour that Kevin frequent there to, kind of get his gear cleaned up or whatever. And
Yeah, yeah,
it's the weirdest thing seeing him out there, especially in Dallas. You know what I mean? Like it just, and I was like,
def
man, that would have been so cool. So
yeah.
just
I mean,
geeking out
since then,
about,
like, of course, like Bill Lieb was a former member of Skinny
yeah.
Puppy too, and
Mhm.
so I recently worked on a couple tracks with him on his solo record that
What was
came out.
that? Yeah.
Yeah,
You guys
I
get
was
studio time, or was it like a separate, like they sent tracks or anything like
yeah,
that?
they sent tracks over, and then I was a guest vocalist on
Cool.
two of the tracks. So
Is that on his latest?
that's right.
Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
it just came out on Metropolis.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's
Yeah, he
two
was
tracks.
promoting the hell out of that thing this
Yeah.
year. I was like, wow, he's really got something new coming out. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, for sure.
Do you have any like non-musical influences? I know on your bio you brought up David Lynch and J.G. Ballard. What
hmm
is it about those two that really stood out for you, and which one, and what influenced you the most? Like what book or what movie? What?
Sure.
Yeah.
I think, I mean, I love David Lynch. Like all of his films are pretty inspirational to
Yeah.
me, and just like his aesthetic and the that juxtaposition of like lightness and darkness is very interesting. I think my favorite film of his is probably Lost Highway. I
Mhm.
saw that in the 90s in the theater. So it was like my first David Lynch experience like in a theater. And of course, like Trent Reznor produced the
Of
soundtrack, and
course.
I was a huge like Nine Inch Nails, Marilyn Manson fan at the time.
Yep,
So
I was all about it growing up. Yeah, I get
yeah.
it. Yeah.
So yeah, the fact that he had produced that soundtrack, and like yeah, the soundtrack's just super cool. Obviously
It's amazing.
there's like a Lou Reed song, a Smashing Pumpkins song, and all those songs are just specific to that soundtrack. They're
Rammstein had
more
that was
oh
kind of
yeah,
the
yeah, that's right,
debut.
Rammstein.
Yeah, it was weird.
Yeah,
I was like, oh wow, that's cool.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it was pretty like yeah, it was just in that time where film soundtracks were like an event. So
Was like at the time I was kind of talking about this at work with some guy. He's a little bit younger, and he was kind of like I was talking about how music and movies were such a big thing. Like you have a good movie and a good soundtrack. And around the
mhm,
90s, you had The Crow and like Mortal Kombat,
yeah.
singles, Dazed and Confused, like
Spawn, the
all these
Spawn
yeah, on
soundtrack.
soundtrack. Oh my God.
Yeah,
And it in the 2000s, it kind of transitioned into video games and like soundtracks, like with like Tony Hawk and all these post-punk bands and or
definitely.
punk bands and pop punk and stuff like. So it was just like I was trying to explain to him. I was like, the 90s, it like meant something where you had these moments where the soundtrack would come out before the movie, and so you're kind of absolving all these songs and they're original songs. A lot of them were covers or not
Yeah,
released on album, whatever it may be,
exactly. Yeah, yeah,
and it meant something. You know
yeah,
what I mean?
yeah.
And of course, David Lynch and
Culturally, it all kind of tied in together, and yeah,
yeah,
it felt
yeah,
special. Yeah,
absolutely, absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah, J.G. Ballard, which one of his works did you like the most?
J.G. Ballard. I've been reading through a bunch of his books lately. I'm currently reading Cocaine Nights, which is kind of more of it's kind of more of a traditional mystery story.
Mhm.
It's quite different than the rest of his books, so I can't say that it's my favorite because I
Of
haven't finished
course.
it yet.
Yeah.
But but I think like the book and the film Crash were like kind of like very shocking.
My favorite, yeah.
I couldn't finish reading Crash because it's quite disgusting.
So
So
dark and disgusting.
it's
Yeah, it's
super,
a hard one.
yeah,
Yeah. And even
it's
watching the
super.
movie, you're just like, oh, like
Yeah,
even you're like clutching your pearls watching
I
something
know,
like,
I know,
ah,
yeah.
yeah.
It's quite like the descriptions in the book are so like surgical and visceral. It's like I couldn't finish the book actually. So, but because it had that much of an impact on me, I was like, wow, this is like pretty powerful writing. But one of my favorite books of his is one called High Rise, which there's a song on Ultraviolet named after that song. And it's about this community, a high rise community in England. And it talks about how there's like basically like the different classes of society, like all live in this high rise, and how they interact and try to integrate and fail to integrate. And Basically everyone who lives on the top floor is like seen as like higher class individuals, and as you get farther down the building, like everything is just like decaying and in disarray. And but yeah, it's a really interesting book. It's quite like it's quite biting and sarcastic and funny, and yeah, it makes interesting observations about how we live and how we treat each other.
Seems a little too relevant. It
I
feels,
know.
I mean,
Right.
certain books, you're just like, oh, this is too real. This feels
Yeah.
like what is really almost going on right now. And if not, then it's could progressively get worse. You know
I
what I
know.
mean?
Yeah, definitely.
Um, this is kind of a big question. Tell me about being a female in the music business, and if you could make any changes, what would it be?
Sure. Yeah, that is a tough one to answer. In my experience, I feel like I've always had a lot of support. Like, like I mentioned with Jason, he like, internally I was always quite shy about singing, but with his support, I was able to like come to believe that I could do it. So, um, and yeah, a lot of I don't know. Yeah, a lot of my experiences have been very positive. I don't like find that I'm like spoken down to, or that um I don't know. Yeah, I don't find that I'm like objectified or any of those things that, you that could happen. But yeah, it's a difficult question to answer. I'm
Yeah,
not
so
sure.
I
No.
don't get a lot. I mean, I've had a few females, and I kind of try and bring up like, hey, tell me about like your experiences. I mean, at least within the underground, it's kind of hard because there's people who, the higher ups, who are a little bit more popular. They tend to be,
Yeah.
either used or objectified or whatever it may be. The underground seems to be kind of a good stable ground, but I've heard some people or some females talk about, well, sometimes you get weird obsessive fans that will stalk or, just annoy
Yeah.
you or whatever it may be.
Yeah,
And
I guess, yeah, sometimes, people, I mean, I think it comes from a positive place most times, like people they're connecting with the music, or they're connecting with the images that are presented. So I think like it comes from like a place of like fascination or appreciation, but yeah, depending on the personality type,
right,
sometimes
of course.
people get a little carried away, but generally everyone's like really like supportive and positive and super.
Do you feel like I mean this isn't part of that one, but the use of like post-punk and it seems to have gotten a little bit more popular. And I think a lot of the underground stuff, thanks to like Bandcamp and I think it's sometimes even Spotify and I use Amazon Music, they will put, your music and stuff like that on playlists. Do you feel
Yeah.
like it's like this whole movement, like a new wave or a new movement of, sort of goth and dark wave and post-punk? I mean, in your perspective, do you feel like it's getting broader and bigger and more relevant now than it was back, in the early 2000s or, anything
I
like
think
that?
so, yeah. I mean, like, you can just tell by the amount of like bands in the scene, like there seems to be like just a ton of records and songs and like lots released every year. So I think the scene is pretty healthy right now. But yeah, it helps to be on the streaming services. I think like earlier when Spotify first, like when bands first started using Spotify, I think they were like more, um, what's the word I'm looking for? They were more likely to add like things to playlists. I think it's
Right.
harder to get on playlists now because the labels are kind of involved in Spotify more than they were in the past. So now, unless you're on like a major label that's like funneling money into Spotify, it's like a little harder to
Of
get
course. Oh my
noticed.
God, yeah.
And
Absolutely.
like, we're on a label, but it's largely independent
Underground, yeah.
Canadian underground label. So, yeah, I mean, the label puts like a little bit of advertising dollars into like helping us get seen on the streaming services, but like it doesn't really move the
Of course.
the needle too much in terms of streaming. It's like it's harder and harder to get noticed because yeah, the big labels are funding
Oh yeah.
everything and putting music in front of everyone. So
I know, and it's we were talking about that with where it's with social media, there's moments where you want to put your music out, but a lot of it is you have to have money because you're paying for someone's attention, basically.
yeah, yeah,
And
definitely.
have you felt like a lot of people are like using your music and stuff like on videos like TikToks and stuff like that, like certain fans, and it kind of broadens, like it brings people to your sites and stuff like that. Like I think I've seen someone use your music, at least actors and leathers, where they'll like listen to it and kind of react on it and stuff like that. Does that kind of bring in a lot of attention to
Yeah, it definitely helps. I mean, we haven't had like a song like that gets super like
like the
carried
yeah yeah yeahs right
away.
now?
Like if like
Everybody
you
wants
have like the Molchat Doma like
right.
song
Oh
with
yeah.
the dancing bats and stuff. So we haven't we haven't had a song like that that's kind of like really blown up on any of the streaming platforms. But yeah, certainly when people share the stuff and talk about the records, it helps bring attention to
Generate,
the
yeah, generate
release.
views and brings
Yeah.
people. Tell me about um the songwriting process for you, lyrically and musically. Where do you usually start off first? Do you kind of work on like on keyboards and kind of work out a melody, or do you start with lyrics, or is there kind of a balance of both?
Yeah, I definitely start with keyboards and like a, drum beat or bass line of some kind, and then kind of just work out a chord progression for a song, just so I have something to sing over, and then yeah, I'll kind of work out some like synth melodies and things like that, and decide like what should be sung and what should be played, and then once I have like a bit of a skeleton of a demo together, then I take that to Jason at the studio, and then we continue to arrange things. He's great at the production side of things, so we arrange things and work on the chord progression further so that it has like the right flow from section to section, and then we get really into like producing the synth sounds and stuff like that. I try not to get too carried away with like the production side of things at home, because I know that once we go to the studio, we're gonna be like basically ripping everything apart and then building it back
Yeah.
together again. So
Oh, I get it. Yeah.
it's nice to have some inspiring sounds to work with at home. So whether that means like I connect a keyboard that I have at home, like the Juno, or
Mm.
um, I have like a couple software synths that I just kind of explore with.
Is there any
Um,
that your favorite or favorite DAW?
I'm using Logic just for the demo process really, and yeah, I like to use the Juno
That's a good.
um, for synth
Yeah.
stuff. It has nice pads and nice leads and stuff. So, oh, there's a
There's your
cat.
cat. No, it's okay. Don't worry. I was like, no,
My
you're
cat
good.
appeared.
It's okay. No, it's fine.
Um, yeah, I recently, well, not recently, like last year or so, I picked up the Arturia
Okay.
Lab, which has like a lot of different synths in it. So, yeah.
I'm an Arteria fan. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, yeah,
Yep.
nice. Yeah,
I
I've
love
got
it.
the
I love it.
I've got the mini lab too
Hmm.
that
Yep.
when I'm songwriting, I connect that.
Yeah,
So
that's my
it's
favorite too.
a
Yeah.
pretty intuitive process for writing
Yep.
and that kind of stuff too. So.
It's good.
And
Yeah, I
then
got the flat.
sometimes I have like ideas on the go, so I know like lots of people have mentioned this now, but I'll put stuff in my Apple Notes,
Hmm.
um, audio recordings and that just to keep track of ideas, and because you don't want them to
Slip
fly away.
away. Oh
Yeah.
yeah. It's so easy to get, like that's why I do both, where I'll have my notebook and then I'll have, on my phone, I'll, either take a note or I'll leave an audio, like, okay, I hear this sound and I'm like, I better figure it out when you get home. Like whatever that sound
Yeah.
means or whatever the melody, I'm like, all right. So I was like, just here it is, da 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 da, da, and then you're like, okay. So yeah. And then I'll work it all out when I get home. So
Yeah,
yep.
totally. Yeah.
How do you balance the emotional and vulnerability in your lyrics with polished and dreamlike production?
Well, like in what way? How do you mean?
Like in a way where even some lyrics may be a bit emotional or vulnerable, and is there a way that you can kind of balance let me see if I can figure out what I was trying to mean by this. Um, like if something's a little bit harder to kind of express lyrically, how do you find a way of approaching that musically without it seeming a bit too heavy? Maybe
I
that's what
see.
I mean by
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think, hmm, that's a tricky question. Um, I don't know. I mean, I think we just try and whenever we're writing and when Jay and I work together on songs, we just try and like let the song kind of, I mean, it sounds kind of like cliche, but we just kind of
Of
let the music talk to us
course,
and
I
like
get it.
let
Yeah.
the song be what it wants to be. So, you know, if we're writing kind of like a dancier track, but all of a sudden it's sort of seeming like the song wants to be more like a ballad or,
Right.
you know, we kind of just make decisions that feel like natural. So, like
Yes.
if you come at like a split in the road and you have to make a decision to go this way or that way, it's
Mm.
like, I don't know, we just kind of like listen to what the music is telling us and then we respond to it in that
That's good.
way.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. Yeah.
And like sometimes if things, you know, yeah, sometimes the lyrics will kind of be tackling some emotional things, and sometimes we'll kind of go down the road where we kind of like sink into that more. And other times maybe it's more effective to make the music kind of colder around that
Hmm.
because and then it has like a different emotional feeling altogether with that that play off of it, you know?
Yeah, I get it. Yeah, perfect. If you could perform anywhere, where would it be? Any country, any venue, even any non-venue? If there's one place where you go, oh, I would love to perform live at this place, what would it be?
Hmm. Let's see. I love to perform at Red Rocks
Oh,
when
yeah, that
Dave
would be
Ramsey
great. Yeah,
play. Yeah, I love if actors or leathers could perform at Red Rocks. It's
that would be
pretty
cool.
neat place. I mean, I think like leathers did have a bit of a dream gig last year. We were able to perform at the Cruel World Festival.
Yeah,
Um, in
that.
Pasadena with you know, Blondie, Duran Duran, Jesus and Mary Chain, and Interpol, and like all these bands that we like greatly
At
admire.
the was that Ministry? Were they at that one
Yeah,
playing?
Ministry
Oh,
as well. Yeah,
Sympathy and
Gary
Twitch.
Newman, and
Yeah.
yeah. So
God,
yeah,
how was
that was
that?
amazing. Yeah, it
You
was
get
so
to
cool.
go backstage or anything? Like meet
Yeah, definitely.
heroes? Yeah.
All the like all the trailers are all backstage, so everyone's just kind of, you know, they have the like big artists like Blondie and Duran Duran in a different place, but yeah, everyone else just is kind of, you know, socializing and hanging out, and yeah, it was a really neat day. We had a good time.
How was it? Did you guys have to play during the daytime and was that like hot and did it affect any of your gear or anything like that?
Yeah, we were like second on, I believe, so we played at like 12:30 in the afternoon.
Oh boy.
But it was fun. We had like a really nice crowd. Like we let everyone know beforehand, you know, if you want to come see us, get
Right.
there
Get there
early.
early,
So
right.
yeah, it wasn't too hot. It was actually a nice time to play,
That's
but
good.
yeah,
Yeah. That's
it was good.
how did actors come about? Was that just by like-minded, musicians and also how'd you get the name?
Actors. Well, that's Jason thought of that one. I'm not too sure where he came up with the
Okay.
name actually. You'd have to ask him.
Okay,
But
yeah. Maybe I'll have them on sometime
yeah,
this year.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, you
Yeah,
should.
absolutely.
But yeah, in terms of how actors came together, like Jay had started writing songs for actors like 2012
Oh wow,
around
okay.
around there, and he was just releasing singles at that point, and he had been touring in previous bands for quite a while, but wasn't really sure if he wanted to tour with actors. And then Jay and I had met and kind of reconnected, and we decided that we were going to do some of the Leather songs together. So we recorded Missing Scene and The previous synth player in Actors was about to have a baby, and kind of their lineup there was going through some changes. So Jay had asked me if I wanted to fill in, and then yeah, the fill in became a full-time thing. So so yeah, that's kind of how I joined Actors. But
Did
yeah.
you do music? Like, were you kind of dabbling in it beforehand, before you joined Actors? Did you have like your own thing going, or was that just your first step into it?
Yeah, like doing the leather songs with him was like my first kind of formal like studio experience. So yeah, prior to that, I'd always been musical. I was always like playing music, not really in bands, more of like, bedroom
Of
shy
course.
shy bedroom music, but yeah, I'd always been interested in like being in a band, but didn't quite know how to like make that happen. So yeah, that kind of bridged the gap there.
Tell me about your first experience playing live. Tell me about that.
Oh
Like
my
getting
gosh,
up on
yeah.
stage for the first time, playing in front of people. How was that your experience with
Yeah,
that?
I mean, it was super nerve-wracking. I remember my hands shaking so bad I could barely play my keyboard parts.
Get it? Yeah.
Hopefully that doesn't happen anymore. It makes it a little difficult to play.
Right. Oh, of
But
course.
yeah, we Actors was opening up for Drab Majesty. I think this was like early 2018-ish.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
But yeah, it was, I mean, we love Drab Majesty, so it was super cool to play that show with them. And yeah, it was my first live show, and yeah, I was incredibly nervous, but it went well. And yeah, and then, we toured all over the world. So it's
Yeah.
hard to be nervous when you're doing something every day because it's too much stress on your system to be nervous all the time. So eventually you just like learn by exposure that like, it's okay. I can be calm.
Where, when you're touring on tour, where do you feel more at home? Where it's like, okay, at least I know that I'll feel comfortable playing, either in this country or this venue or anything. Have you felt one place where it feels more like, I mean, besides Vancouver or anything like that, where you feel like I can really connect with people?
Um, we're so fortunate to have like pretty interactive fans, and everyone's super sweet and welcoming wherever we go. We've always made sure to, spend time with people at the merch table and come out and say hi to people after we play because, we like having that connection with our fans. So to single out one place is difficult, but
No, I get it.
I mean, when we travel, we notice that Germany kind of feels the most
I've been hearing that a lot. A
yeah,
lot
it
of
feels
people,
the
when they
most,
say they go on tour to Germany, they love playing Germany.
yeah, yeah. I mean, the fans are, very like, and in Spain too, the fans are very passionate and like excited, and Germany kind of feels like the most like home in terms of like the scenery and like the amount of greenery and stuff like that. So, yeah,
Is it surreal when people are singing your songs to you, kind of thing? I've never really had that
definitely.
experience,
Yeah,
but how does
yeah.
that feel just for you alone?
It's pretty amazing. It like, lifts us up, and yeah, I mean, just performing in general and having that connection with the audience is always really, really special. And yeah, it's always really exciting.
Blessed, you're right, and honored to. How does your music translate from studio to a live set? Is there any much of certain things that you prefer to take up on stage when you're performing live?
Like in terms of like gear, do you
Like
mean? Or
gear, yeah. Sorry, I should probably
yeah, that's
specify
okay.
that.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the synth parts are recorded on a Prophet 6 or like a Juno. The Prophet 6, it's a little too expensive to be traveling and
I,
touring with,
yep.
but I was using the Juno 06A module with a keyboard controller. It was a rig that I had set up for tour and stuff like that. So the majority of the sounds I was able to replicate in within that module.
Oh, cool.
Um, but there are like a lot of kind of fragile connections for
Mhm.
that setup, and it takes a while to set up. So in order to kind of make my setup time a little more efficient, I recently picked up the Juno XM, which has, or Jupiter XM, sorry, which has all the Juno sounds actually inside as
That's
well as Jupiter sounds. So, yeah, just recently I like reprogrammed all of the actors and leather stuff into the Jupiter
that's
XM.
fun to do. That's one day.
I know it takes, it's a big
Reprogram and everything. Yeah.
a big project. So, and unfortunately, like it wasn't a case of me just transferring patches over. Like I actually had to go in and manually build everything again, which was a bit of a project, but it worked out really well. So, yeah, I took the Jupiter XM on this last tour, and yeah, it was great. I'm very happy with it. So that's the synth I'm using now.
That's awesome. Perfect. Do you have any interesting tour or planned live stories or fan interactions or anything like that?
Hmm, I don't know.
Anything that stands out where you're like on tour, it was because I had one dude was telling me, he's like, oh, I was on tour and then I got really sick and then he powered through the whole set, but then once he got off stage, he just basically collapsed in his RV.
Yeah.
Do you have any stories about, anything of being on
Yeah.
tour?
Yeah, I mean, being on tour is it's difficult. It's hard on the body and like it can be hard on one's mental health too. We kind of joke in the band that like it's not a tour until you like cry, basically.
Yeah, right.
But not in like a mean-spirited way. It's just
Of
like
course.
there's gonna be a day when you're like too hungry, too tired, and you're like, I just can't. Like
A lot of emotions. I mean, between saving money, traveling, dealing with the
yeah.
road, uh, everything like that. I mean, just dealing with, sound guys and promoters and stuff. Like it's a lot to take in for,
It's
yeah,
yeah, it can
yeah.
be quite stressful. I act as tour manager for the bands too. So, I mean, because my background in design, I did like a lot of project management and stuff like that. So it happens to be something that I'm quite good at is
Good.
like, managing all the like fine details of like where we're flying and like the hotel bookings and
Right.
um, making sure we get from point A to point B and stuff like that. So that's something that I take on in the band as well. But yeah, it's a roller coaster of emotions for sure. Like on the recent Actors Tour, we had like just an amazing like uplifting show in LA. We played a headlining show for like 500 people and like we just had this, wonderful experience. The venue was beautiful and the staff was so like lovely and then the next night we played for 20 people in Fresno, which was also wonderful,
Yeah,
but
it's
like
great. Yeah.
you get the roller coaster moments of like feeling high, and then you get humbled. You're like, okay, now I'm playing for 25 people again tonight. Let's go.
Yep. Like I'll read a lot of books by musicians, and then if you hear like I was reading Unknown Pleasures, the story about Joy Division, and
Yeah,
when Peter's talking about, oh, we played to nobody this night. You know what I mean? It's one of
yeah,
those things where you're like, wow, like,
definitely.
anytime you're feeling like, oh, I'm not doing this well enough, or this isn't going my way, or whatever, it's like sometimes you need those moments where it's like you're gonna take what you get, you know what I mean? Playing for the sound guy or
Yeah,
playing guitar alone
definitely.
or whatever, you know what I mean? Like you just gotta
Yeah,
do what you gotta do and just love it. So
totally. We always play for the people who are there, that's important to us that they have a good time and that, yeah, they connect with the music.
I agree. As a fan, what concert influenced you the most?
Hmm. I think like I've seen Depeche Mode a couple times and they're one of my favorite bands of all time. So to see those songs that I love so much and, performed by Dave Gahan, who's one of the greatest front people of all time, like that was always really inspiring for me as a singer. Um, yeah, I just love those songs so much. So to get to see them live was pretty special.
That's fantastic.
What else? Um, hmm, what else? Oh yeah, I saw Swans like early
Mm.
2000s
Yeah.
in Vancouver. It's definitely, people say Swans is one of the loudest bands in the world.
It's
They
real
are
experience. Yeah,
right. Yeah.
definitely.
But yeah, it was just so cool having been a fan of them for a long time and to be able to get them to see live. I don't think they had played in Vancouver for like 20 years or something like that. So
Mhm.
it was great to be able to catch them like early 2000s
Early
too.
2000s when when he was kind of starting to, I don't know, like it felt like he was kind of like reinventing something. I don't, you know what I mean? Like,
I think it was maybe 2012-ish,
okay,
maybe
yeah,
like
yep.
around there. Yeah.
Hmm. That's
Yeah.
awesome. What do you hope listeners take away from your music and your lyrics?
Um, hmm, let me think. Um, that's a tough one. What do I
Sorry,
hope?
I know I always try to get
No,
up
that's okay. You
and
can you
then
can edit out the
no,
long
you're fine. You're good.
inky part. What do I hope they take away? I guess like the the main thing in Leathers is like uh this kind of in between like fantasy and reality. And like that's, I don't know, that's kind of an area that my brain likes to play within. So, whether you're dreaming or awake, it's like these kind of like liminal, like in between
Yeah,
spaces.
yeah, I know
Um,
exactly what you mean. Yeah.
yeah, I kind of, and like, there's a lot of that in David Lynch's films
Mm.
and that too, and in like Twin Peaks and as well. So I don't know, there's just that exploration of like
Yeah.
other states of being, other states of thought, other states of existence that it's kind of like it's fun to explore in those areas. And yeah, I hope other people find it
Yeah, I can see that. I
interesting,
mean, those
unique.
elements of where we don't pay a lot of attention to, where I think they kind of brought that up when they were talking about my Bloody Valentine, where musically they try and get that between awake and dream
Hmm.
sound in your head. I think that's
Yeah,
the best way. And I go, yeah, there's a lot of, I can see where you're talking about where you want to explore those elements where people don't quite put themselves in, personally, vulnerably, and emotionally. Like, you know what I mean?
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
I get
yeah,
that. That's
yeah.
awesome.
It's a little hard to articulate, but
Yes,
yeah, yeah, exactly. That's what I mean. That it's like there's like these interesting stages between like the things that we see and do every day, and then this like fantasy element that it's interesting to me that I like to explore with.
I agree. That's awesome. How do you stay inspired and how do you overcome like writer's block?
I watch a lot of movies. Um, yeah, sort of like if I ever feel like I'm a bit blocked or I don't really have enough ideas, I try and watch a lot of movies or I
Is there
read a
ones you
lot.
particularly go to first where it's like, I know you find comfort in these movies or these books?
Um, I don't know if there's ones that I return to a lot. I mean, I do love I recently watched the Twin Peaks The Return,
Or
the
yeah, that's
the newer
wild.
yeah,
Yeah.
the newer season. I've watched that a few times and like yeah, it's very inspiring, but um yeah, I just sort of try and or sometimes I'll try and find something new because like discovering like a new film or a new piece of music or something can like open up a new little corner in the brain to be inspired to. So yeah, just try and watch a lot, read a lot, just be open to things. Sometimes I just go for a walk in the neighborhood. I got a puppy last year, so we just go out in the fresh air and have some fun for an hour. And
Oh, I get
sometimes I'll think of an idea, or sometimes I'll see something on the street that will inspire me in some way too.
that's awesome. Do you do streaming or are you strictly DVD, Blu-ray? And is there ones that kind of stand out the most? Like I like movie or like Criterion Collection where you can kind of get more into the underground or the indie films and stuff like that.
Yeah, I have the Criterion subscription to the streaming service, so yeah, I definitely dig in through those quite a bit. I don't have I don't have a DVD player anymore, so I don't have like a lot of
Gotcha.
physical copies of
Yeah,
things these days, but tried to downsize on the amount of
I
stuff,
get
but
it. Declutter. Yeah, I get it. Yeah.
yeah. But yeah, we watched the Criterion Collection quite a bit. What else? We've been exploring some like of the Japanese kind of cyberpunk films like Tetsuo
Oh,
Iron
yes.
Man.
I have
Uh,
to. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. Jason and I watched Begotten the other night,
Mm-hmm.
which is that
Oh.
wild movie from the early 90s that's like really gritty, grainy, black and white about like God killing himself
Mm-hmm.
and then Mother Earth giving birth to the son of Earth.
Yep. All that
So,
like that, just that moment where I think it's the beginning, and I like because I kind of studied film and stuff like that in high school and college, and just kind of watching it. I'm like, as a filmmaker, I'm like, how do they get? I mean, just the grotesque face, and I'm like, is it blood? Is it mud?
I
What are they
know.
using? What are these elements that they're using? And
Yeah,
I know he's worked with I think Manson. They worked on a couple music videos
that's
together.
right. Yeah, I actually hadn't seen Begotten until like this week.
Yeah,
But I always like, yeah, I read about it in
it's intense.
Manson's book.
Yeah.
And I think he did the video for Cryptorchid,
Yep.
which is
Hmm.
Antichrist Superstar. So
Yep.
I was definitely like curious about the visuals and
Hmm.
stuff like that. So yeah, we watched it the other night. We were both like,
It's intense.
oh.
My daughter, because she's like my oldest daughter, she's trying to get more into, watching scary movies or whatever. And she's like,
Yeah,
"What do you recommend?" I was like, which direction do you want to go? Do you want to go something that's a little bit more well known? Do you want to go into the underground? So
yeah,
I kind of gave like Evil Dead. Like you can try The Exorcist. I'm like, or if you want to go really weird, you can check out Begotten. And
yeah.
that's like I was like, it's a bit out there and it's a bit intense. I'm like, there's no really, I mean, unless they added music later, I didn't think there was any music. I think it's just all quiet.
Actually, there is music. I
For
was gonna
music,
say
okay, I couldn't
that
remember.
I did like the score. It's
Okay.
quite there's like kind of a heartbeat sound
Yeah.
through the whole
Okay. Yeah, you're right.
thing.
Yeah.
And then there's some kind of it sounds like synth drone kind of stuff,
Hmm.
which is quite cool. So yeah, musically it was actually pretty inspiring as
That's
well.
cool. Yeah, I'll have to re-listen to it because I mean it's been a while since I've seen it, and there's always so many different versions because um it's not copywritten, so it kind of becomes public domain. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
definitely. And it's like one of those cult ones that just got shared on VHS.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
like the quality. Although I think the Criterion recently reprinted it
Did they?
properly.
All right. Write that down.
Yeah.
I'll have to check that out.
So we just watched it on YouTube because it's available on the
Availability.
YouTube and like Internet Archive kind of thing. But yeah, it was very low res. So
Did you
but that's kind of how it's supposed to be watched. I think
it
it's supposed to
should be. I think if you try and clean it up, you're going, well, it's
be
kind of missed an element
yeah.
of something because it was funny I was talking with someone about music and how certain artists will go for kind of a gritty sound and then they try and remaster it kind of like
Mhm.
I think they try to remaster it's Tom Waits. Oh God, what was that album? I just tried to order a new copy because I burnt out my last one. Why am I'm drawing a blank. Hold on one minute.
That's okay. All good.
Real Gone by Tom
Oh, yeah,
Waits.
yeah. Cool. Yeah.
And when it first came out, it was real just gritty, just I mean, just typical Tom Waits style. But then when they remastered it, it loses something. It loses this sort of like grit to it. It's like you're trying to
Right.
polish something that's like, you know, that's supposed to be just and you try and polish it, and it's just
Static
like you
sounding.
lose something. Yeah, you know what I mean?
Yeah, for
So
sure.
yeah. And
I
so
like
I
the
think it
record. I haven't actually listened to Tom Waits in a while. I used to be like pretty pretty loyal fan listening all the time, but I got out of it a little bit. Maybe I'll go
It's
back to it.
okay. No, it was funny because it was his birthday yesterday.
Oh,
Because
that's right.
of course, I saw it on online, and I was like, oh yeah. So I started just kind of just diving back into it and everything like
Yeah.
that. So that's kind of how I started going. Oh yeah, I need a new copy of that album. Like burn. ruined one physical copy of it. I'm like, I need another one. So,
Yeah.
oh, since we're on the Criterion Collection,
Yeah.
David Lynch's early stuff. What did you think about all that? Like
Yeah,
his shorts and his, little side projects before Eraserhead.
yeah, I mean, some of the short films that are on there are super, super cool and like very weird too. But
Very intense.
but yeah, it's what I like about seeing the short films and like stuff like Begotten is like there's something that's so artistic about it. You know, it's not concerned with making money. It's just like it's concerned with the expression of filmmaking and images and how sound and image work together. And um, yeah, it's just seeing the different, and having shot things on film, it's like you see the different film stocks, and there's all these different qualities that make it, a very special, like charming medium. So yeah, it's really cool to see some of the behind the scenes and the short cuts that are on Criterion as well.
Love it. Yeah, absolutely. If you could collab with any artist, who would it be?
Hmm. That is also a tough one. Um,
Even if you do like a soundtrack for anybody, like anybody that you go, this would be cool to collab with.
I always thought like I'd like to do like something with Nick Cave, maybe.
Yeah,
Whether it be like singing with him in some way or yeah, I don't know. That just came to mind,
that
but
would be cool. Yeah. Well, they did a documentary about the birthday party recently and I think it's on Tubi, so you might be actually you could probably watch it for free. But it kind of talks about the band in the beginning and the prime of the post-punk and everything
Mhm.
like that, and kind of how they were trying to find themselves and find their sound and dealing with, recording in the studio versus playing live and trying to capture all those elements. It's really cool if you haven't seen that. It's really neat.
Yeah, that's awesome. Rowland S. Howard is such an interesting guitar player. Um, yeah, just all that kind of like jangly, really angular Fender Jaguar playing is so cool.
I know it's such a unique way because there's so many different artists, especially if they're not classically trained, that they go, here's my instrument. Now let me try and filter what's going on here into this and try to make
Yeah,
it my own. I love that.
yeah, definitely. It's
Yeah.
like a lot of that stuff is surprisingly like atonal, like the notes kind of don't really go together, but there's also like some kind of beauty in all the mess of the notes and feedback and all that stuff.
I love it. It's fantastic. Do you have any pre-show rituals like before you get up on stage when you're dealing with your nerves and stuff? Do you have something that kind of gets you into the mode or kind of releases the sort of anxiety or whatever you may have getting on stage?
Usually Kendall and I like kind of just like shake our arms and like jump around like crazy just to kind of like
Yep, I get that.
just to get
Yeah.
the blood moving a bit and to warm up my voice, like we'll sometimes like sing like some scales a little bit.
Yeah.
There's also like certain words that I learned through vocal training that can help like open your voice for like
Oh.
projecting and stuff like that. So one of them is water bottle.
Oh, wow, that's cool.
So we go like water bottle, and then it kind of opens up your
Yeah.
voice.
But I can see someone coming, you need a water bottle? Like they'll just bring you water. That's
So
awesome.
yeah, I just kind of say that over and over, and so it kind of like throws my voice in.
Projects it. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Oh,
Awesome.
and then we also we none of us drink, so we drink
Yeah, I don't
energy
drink either.
drinks.
Yeah. So
So we're into the caffeine though, so we drink a lot of a lot of Red
tea
Bull
and
and stuff like
coffee
that
and yeah,
before
I
we
get
play.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was talking with a lot of artists now where they're kind of getting away from that sort of like, life of access type of drinking or drugs or whatever. And they're going, well, I kind of want to keep this thing going and focus on my art and stuff like that. And I'm like, it's good because I've always been real, like I not so much straight edge. I just don't drink. I don't believe in drinking, and it's not really my bag. But
Yeah,
a lot of people I talk to are just like, oh, I want to focus on the music and not deal with, the shit that kind of comes with drinking or doing drugs and shit like that. And I'm like,
sure.
good, I get it. I get
Yeah,
it.
definitely. I think like if you're like partying a lot on the road, I think, it might be fun for a little while, but it's not really sustainable long term. Like, it's easier to get sick, your mental health can suffer, like it can create like disagreements among like the
Yeah.
morale and like of band members and stuff like that. So but yeah, I mean, if you look at all the like big bands that were like partiers and stuff, everyone kind of gets sober at a certain
Yeah.
point
Yes.
because you're
Yes.
like, well, in order to do this, I need to like take care of myself and like, you know, put that first so that I can do music long term. So yeah.
Yep, I get it. I was talking with Martin Atkins. You know Martin from
Yeah, yeah.
Ministry, and so I got his book, and we were kind of talking about like how I was like, man, what was it like? I mean, at least touring with Ministry in
Yeah.
'90s of the access and the heroin and cocaine and all that, and I was like,
Yeah.
he had to deal with of a lot of bands that he's worked with that have dealt with being dealing with the addiction and then getting sober. And he's like, it really didn't weigh a lot on me. He's like, I just wanted people to know that I was there if they needed someone to deal with or talk, to talk to or kind of come down off of something. I think that's important, to have someone who's there to kind of going, okay, instead of knocking heads, it's like, what can I do to help you out if you're dealing with this sort of mental strain of being on tour and everything like that. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Definitely.
Do you have any advice for aspiring musicians?
Uh, hmm. Hmm.
A big question, I know.
Um, it's going to be harder work than you expect, I
Yep.
think. Um, you're going to have to kind of become a content creator
Mm,
now. Um, so you're going to have to learn a lot of different skills and not be an expert at any of them, but kind of know how to do like video and how to do recordings and also like take pictures of yourself. So you have to, and like also have like a presence on social media. So it's a lot of work managing it all, but it's very rewarding too because you get to express yourself and just follow through on those artistic uh, like dreams that you have for yourself.
great, yeah. No, and it's weird because you kind of go, I mean, even at the beginning when I started doing music back in like when it was like MySpace and stuff like that when I started doing it in the beginning, and you're kind of going, okay, I'm going to put my stuff out there. I'm like, wait, how come nobody's coming to it? And so
Yeah.
now like every time you're like, okay, now I got to be the promoter, I got to be the guy who you got to get people's attention, and not just that, but with music and with you're fighting to not be, you want something creative and not cheesy, and it's such a weird balance where it's like, okay, now I got to go, if now that I know music, now I got to go into this editing or do this new
Yeah.
thing now, and it's like, whoo, it's a lot to learn.
Yeah.
So
You have
yep.
to wear a lot of different hats. And when you come into the part where you're touring, then it's like a whole other thing. Like,
Whole another hat. Yep.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Like, actors, we like booked our own tours for like, the first like 4 or 5 years until we got a booking agent. But it took us that long to get a booking agent. And now, thankfully we have the help of an agent to look after our shows and that for us. But
Um,
yeah, there's a lot of different things. I mean, we manage all of our own like merch orders. We ship out everything ourselves. We design all the merch ourselves.
good.
Like there's all these things that we take care of, which is really fun. But yeah,
That's
it's
good. Yeah.
a lot of work.
Yeah, it's a lot of work, but you also kind of have your own freedom where you don't have
Yeah,
to rely on, some guy being like, I don't like the colors of those shirts, or I don't like the picture, blah, 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 where you're dealing with studio bullshit or with, like record company type stuff where you're knocking heads and having disagreements. You're kind of like, this is mine and this is my freedom. But what comes with freedom is a lot of little extra work that I gotta, manage and bookkeep and numbers and stuff like that. So yep,
Definitely.
I get that. What song did you write that felt the hardest to kind of get off your chest, where it felt so personal that it was like, oh, this is heavy. Should I really even just put this out, or should I, did you have anything like that?
Um, Let me think. Hmm. I'm like revisiting all the songs in my head
No, you're good.
right
It's
now.
okay. No, it's fine. Take your time. Yeah.
Um, I mean, each song is kind of its own, like, you kind of go through all these different emotions when you're writing music. Like, there's kind of, you'll have like the spark of an idea, and then that'll be kind of like an emotional process because you're trying to get your idea down.
Yeah.
And then you kind of get into the more like nuts and bolts of like technically trying to like get a song kind of laid out so it feels like a song. And then so you're kind of like more emotionally removed at that
Hmm.
point as you're like figuring out the pieces. But then as you're kind of wrapping up production and the writing of a song, it becomes more emotional again as you're recording the vocals and um, maybe like re-experiencing the lyrics through performance and
Yeah.
things like that. So I don't know if I have a particular song that like was like kind of a roller coaster to kind
Right.
of
I get it. Yeah.
perform, but yeah, like a lot of the times, but when you're performing and recording the vocals, like yeah, it can get emotional because you want it to convey the right
Mhm.
feeling. And um, I try not to get too like wrapped up in my head of like the technical aspects and just kind of sing like from a pure kind of relaxed place so that the emotion just comes through.
Right. I mean, did you ever have moments where you felt like almost like a perfectionist type situation where you're like, this isn't going my way, I'm ready to throw it away? Or have you ever just kind of had this moment of just let it come through me instead of overthinking the process?
Yeah, I mean it's really easy to overthink things, and when Jay and I are recording vocals in studio, it can be stressful because you want to get it right, but you also want to be efficient because the more you kind of re-sing something over and over, like the more you kind of get in your head about it. So usually like the earliest takes are the most kind of authentic feeling or sounding. So it's like overall, I think it's just really good to arrive at the studio prepared, like knowing what you're singing, like how you want that like emotion to come across, and like to be so like rehearsed that it's just like breathing. Because if you're thinking about like, oh, I have to like push more air at this point, or I have to like belt it a little more here and like take this syllable down or not like make my s's too like essy. Like,
Yes.
if you're thinking about all those technical things, it can like get in the way of the actual performance. So it's good to be really rehearsed and just kind of like just let everything kind of flow.
Yep, I agree. One last question. What's the future looking for leathers and actors? Do you guys have anything you got going on? Are you guys in the process of recording anything?
Yep, we're working on lots of new music for actors at the moment, and I'm gonna start writing new material for leathers over the holidays too.
We have it.
Yeah, and then in the new year, at the end of January, Actors goes over to Europe. We have a just over a month of tour dates in Europe, so that'll be super cool. And then when we come back, we have some more dates in the US with Actors. Leathers has a couple dates. We're going to play a couple dates in Texas with Actors, and then we'll also play the Mexico City date with Actors as well. So those will be like a dual bill type show.
Bouncing from one. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
awesome. That's cool.
And then, yeah, that kind of spring of touring wraps up for Actors. We will play Cruel World with Actors this year. So that'll be very exciting. And then we're going to take some time off to write some more music and hopefully finish up records for both bands. And yeah, it's
Fantastic.
always
I'm
nice.
excited.
The summer is always nice in Vancouver, so it's nice to be home summertime, and we'll just get creative and do some art and make music and just enjoy.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being part of my podcast. I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks for the nice chat. And it's up tomorrow. Is that how it
Yes,
goes?
I will have it out tomorrow. Do the editing tonight and have it up by tomorrow morning. So, and I'll send you a link. So, all
Awesome.
right,
Yeah.
cool. Thank you
Nice.
so much. I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, my pleasure.
All right.
Chat soon.